somebody had started wielding a knife and he'd intervened. He'd got his wife and child there, and he was and they stabbed him, and he literally died. But they do this ridiculous test. It's like theatre, and yet we're supposed to believe that that's the only way they can test. The whole way that animals are kept and driven to the slaughterhouse, all of that memory is in that animal's cells, every cell in its body. The way they're slaughtered, all of it. And then you're taking on that cellular memory. It's all wrong. And it's not, if you watch ancient tribes when they eat meat, it is done with such respect and it's swift. And that animal is never badly treated. It has a wonderful life. I think one has to be very, very careful. And I see now it's a big thing to eat meat, but you also have to remember that the amine portion of that animal protein can't be converted into sugar to be used as energy or stored as fat. It has to be excreted by the kidneys, and it's secreted as urea and creatinine. So your kidneys have to work harder, and when they're working harder, they hang on to. Your body begins to hang on to sodium and let go of potassium. Now your heart's working harder, and then you have too much sodium in the cell then, and the potassium outside of the cell. Now the cell is waterlogged, so sugar in your foods in the presence of oxygen that we breathe, and ozone, Latin, breath of God, can't generate energy, ATP, adenosine triphosphate. So that cell begins to ferment, and it's a cell that's fermenting that damages the DNA, which leads to disease, which leads to what they call cancer. So what you tend to see is when people will stick to this meat, and they're not doing it correctly, you'll see eventually old symptoms will begin to surface, or new ones, and they're much worse. And so when you look at particularly like the Hunzas in the Himalayas, take the Inuits who ate, the real Inuits, not the ones with external influence eating meat, they would eat what they could catch. Yeah. And it wouldn't necessarily be the same all the time, because you'll get animals which will come through certain waters where they'll do, like when you go down to Mexico, the Bay of Mexico, the whales will come at certain times of the year to have their calves. So they would eat what they would catch. Now, one of the animals that they would eat, all the blubber and everything, one of the things that the Inuits would eat is the caribou. And the caribou grazes for thousands of miles. But when they, killed that caribou to eat it, they didn't go, oh, great steak. The first thing they would go straight for is the rumen in the stomach, which is full of the grasses that it's eaten, which is full of nitrilicide, which is why they don't get cancer. So, so you have to look at it like that. And so when I see people going, well, I'm carnivore. Well, are you though? You're going down the supermarket or the butcher, because a carnivore would typically kill what he's going to eat. So I take all of these things, I sort of listen to everybody, and then I don't listen to any of them, and I read, and then I go for big long walks, and I wait for what comes into me and tells me what to do. Yeah. And it serves me well thus far.
I think that makes a lot of sense, because like Vicky said, you're sort of inundated by, when you start on this journey, and inundated by different messages from here, there and everywhere, and you're trying to make sense of it. And I think ultimately one has to just sort of fall back on what feels right, what comes to us.
Or what doesn't come to us.
Yeah.
I was introduced to this oat milk. And it was delicious. And I don't drink regular tea and coffee. I drink chicory or peppermint tea. But then I was introduced to this, just a tiny bag. It's a bit extravagant. And I only buy it when I can. It's a little tiny bag of coffee, but it's got 4 different mushrooms in it.
Oh yeah.
One being lion's mane.
Yeah.
It is just, it's, just an elixir of it's just delicious. I only have a very, very tiny level spoonful because I'm not a coffee drinker. If I'm out somewhere, I'll buy a coffee, have a few sips, and I can't drink it.
Yeah.
But anyway, I had this oat milk and it was so creamy and I don't know why. It must have been the devil in my head. Literally. And then I noticed that my hands had started to hurt again when I did this. And I'm not lying. Every now and again, I'm like everyone else. A dirty bag of crisps or potato chips, as the Americans call them. They're delicious. And I would eat them. So going all over the place here, but when that, 2020 hit and I knew what was happening, I just was like, I don't care. And within 3 months, I suddenly ate things I hadn't eaten for so long. I had crisps, I had shortbreads, I had chocolate. I put on, I saw pictures of myself and footage of myself in Trafalgar Square and I looked bloated, I looked fat, I looked sugar. But I didn't care, I was like, well, that's it. But anyway, all of a sudden I realised that my joints all hurt and I would get pimples and I couldn't see my eyesight because, of course, when your eyes go blurry, it's like you've been looking at your mobile phone or it's sugar in your eyes. So I suddenly noticed having this oat milk that my joints hurt again. I was like, oh, wait a minute, what's in that? And rapeseed oil.
Rapeseed oil, yeah.
So I was like, right, that's that. So I thought, I only like maybe a tablespoon of milk. So I thought, well, I may as well just have organic milk or raw milk. So I've got to get to Plawhatch, get some raw milk, decant it into little jars, which the organic almond butter is in little jars. Decant it, put it in the freezer, and then I'll be able to have my little decadence that I have in the morning. But your body, stop listening to people. Well, you can read all their books and listen to them, but ultimately, turn off the TV, take out your earphones, and have nothing. Don't have any noise anywhere in your house. You don't need background music because background music is not background music. That background music is filtering through your brain and it's making you make decisions that aren't yours. So turn everything off. Go into the woods, the forest, where you can hear nothing but nature. And you'll know what to do. You'll know what to eat. You'll know what to drink. And your body will tell you. Your body will tell you exactly what to do. So I'd had this organic milk and I had it for a few days and I noticed my joint hurts slightly and I thought, well, it has to be that. It's the only thing. So, it's listening to your body. Your body it's the most exquisite and remarkable vehicle that you will ever have the luxury to get in and drive to experience everything that has been put on this beautiful earth for us. That's what it is. If you go out there looking for a fight, you'll get one. If you go out there looking for love, you'll get one. You will. So if you just go out there looking for love and looking for everything that heals your body, you'll find it. You don't need to listen to anyone else. You'll suddenly think, I really want to have something. Like today before I came down here, I had 8 ounces of pure pomegranate juice, which I should have it every day, but I probably don't. I'll probably have it 5 days because there are studies showing that it will mind sweep your blood vessels.
Okay.
Because of course it's sugar that furs up your blood vessels, binding to protein, not fat. Not fat at all. So I just thought, I want some of that pomegranate juice because it makes your mouth kind of clap together because it's a bit sour. And if you can get a nice big juicy pomegranate, even better. You just roll it on the floor a bit, bang it, and then get a corkscrew and push a hole right in the bottom, and you can literally squeeze pure pomegranate juice into a glass. And then you can eat all the rest. Yeah, so your body will tell you what it needs, what it wants. You might, sometimes I suddenly, all of a sudden, and I don't often eat fish. It's very rare. I don't eat meat at all, but all of a sudden it'll just be like, I want some sardines and I'll have loads, a big pile of them with garlic and apple cider vinegar on them, and I'll just eat the lot. Yeah, I ate some organic eggs. I love eggs. But I noticed that if I ate a few eggs, I got a bit of pain in my right kidney area every time I had it. And of course, it's that amine portion, isn't it, that, your body doesn't recognize a cooked egg because it's not in its natural state anymore. Its natural state is a gel. So you've now cooked it. So your body has to unfold that foreign word into letters to understand it. So, it's that, again, your kidneys are having to work harder to excrete that urea and creatinine because the amine portion of it. So I thought, well, maybe I shouldn't eat 3 soft-boiled eggs with Celtic sea salt. And so I started to watch my body, and I had 2. Yep, still got the pain, so I just stopped having them.
Okay.
So listen, your body's talking to you every day. Every day. I felt fantastic when I did the Gerson therapy. I went very, very skinny. Oh, I was really skinny. But you gain it again. But I ate potatoes every day, twice a day. And people go, oh, potatoes are fat. Well, clearly they're not. Because I lost... when I was diagnosed, I was the fattest I'd been in years. I was doing 3 to 4 weight sessions a week, cycling 120 kilometres. I was doing a dance class, and I was constantly putting on weight. I had psoriasis on my scalp. I had ectopic heartbeats. I had plantar fasciitis when I got out of the bed in the morning. My feet really would hurt underneath my feet. My joints would hurt. I would always get intercostal muscle spasm where you breathe in and all of a sudden you get this terrible stabbing pain. You think, oh, I'm going to die. My eyesight was going downhill. And I began the Gerson therapy. Sorry, lads, if you're watching it, but my menstrual cycle had gone to every 21 days instead of 28 days. It was really, really bad with cramps. I suffered horrific migraines from when I was about 20 years of age, and I couldn't take the birth control pill because of the migraines intermittently. Within 6 weeks of starting the Gerson therapy, I could read without glasses for the first time in a decade. Every single health issue I had, the psoriasis, everything went. My cycle went back to 28 days, and I was 46, and at 48 and a half, and I have one sister 2 years older, another sister 4 years older, at 48 and a half, my menstrual cycle just stopped. I've never had a hot flush. I've never had a single symptom of menopause. Not a single symptom of menopause have I had. Nothing. My sex drive didn't change. I just don't have a fella. Nothing changed. I hear women saying, oh, I'm getting hot flushes. My hair's gone thin. I'm depressed. I've put on loads of weight. I've got a dry vagina. I don't fancy my partner anymore. Maybe that's just it. You don't fancy him. And all these things. And I can't empathise because I've never had one of them. Mm-hmm. And women in Eastern cultures, there's no word for menopause. So what is it?
Yeah.
It's your diet and your environment and what you're putting in your head. So your menstrual cycle is meant to stop, and you're not meant to have babies anymore because your eggs have been around for a long time and they've been exposed to a lot. And actually, it becomes very difficult for sperm to fertilise the egg. It becomes very difficult. I worked in IVF for a little while at Centres for Assisted Reproduction in Nottingham, and as a bank nurse, and it becomes very difficult. So, what they did up there, they did this procedure where they drill a hole into these older eggs and kind of bonk the head of the sperm and force these sperm in, or sperm that can't penetrate an egg. They do the same thing, drill a hole. And then I think it was a decade later, I was reading that they've now discovered a protein on part of these sperm near the head that can't fertilise an egg, that isn't on the other sperm. And I thought, wow, what does that mean for all these ICSI babies who were delivered as a consequence of that procedure being successful? What does that mean down the line from a genetic standpoint when you start tinkering with the Lord's binary code?
What's ICSI, sorry?
ICSI, well, it's that. It's assisted. It's assisted. It's not just IVF, which is in vitro fertilization, where they put the eggs into a petri dish, with a concentration of certain amount of sperm that have been washed in a sugar solution to make them swim better, because you can't put semen into the uterus. Only the sperm swim up. Semen's really toxic. That's the solution that the sperm are in. If you put that in the uterus, you'll kill the woman. Isn't that interesting?
Wow, really?
There you go. You get some real tidbits.
Remember that.
Yeah, let's talk about that. I love that. But anyway, so ICSI it goes a step further where they're not allowing these sperm in the dish around the egg in this sugar solution to find their way in. And once it's not a closed shell on this egg, it's like folds. And once the sperm goes in, a fantastic electrical response happens. This explosion of life. Mm-hmm. And then chemicals are given off that stops any more sperm coming in, because then you have the complement of DNA. Yeah. And then half that DNA, of course you'd have double, it would be no good. Half of it then snaps off and is kicked back out. It's quite remarkable. And then this is what you have then, the meeting of the man and the woman in this beautiful, beautiful new human being. From that moment. So abortion is wrong, whatever it may be. Even if, this is my opinion. Mm-hmm. Actually, it should be everybody's opinion. But even, the morning after pill, I don't agree with anymore. Putting a coil up if you've had unprotected sex, because it's still conception's occurred. It just stops implantation, or it makes it abort because the uterus is full with the coil.
What do you think on a kind of esoteric level then might be? You say that shouldn't happen. So what suffering is a result of that? If we're talking about a soul either entering has it entered? Has it?
Yes, the physical. It's the physical was the egg from the woman and the sperm from the man and the DNA, and then that soul, that electrical. We're electrical before we're chemical, before we're physical. Has gone. It's there.
Yeah.
That life you've been entrusted with that.
So on a big picture sort of level, what suffering would I mean? I'm playing devil's advocate in a way.
It's a horrible term, though, isn't it?
It is a horrible term, and I try not to use it, but I find it it's kind of useful. But
you're putting an opposing view over.
Yeah.
You're not his advocate.
Yeah.
Ever.
I don't want to be
Don't speak those words. Don't speak those words over yourself, otherwise it's going to come out in my picture. Where we refute that in the mighty name of Jesus Christ, where nobody's the devil's advocate.
I'm glad you picked me up on that, because I picked myself up and then I let myself get away with it.
Our words are our only weapon of offence, of attack. And we pick up these words, drop dead gorgeous, stop it, you're killing me. I'm going to be devil's advocate. No, you're not. You're going to put over some of these mental health people's views that you can't pray outside an abortion centre, even in your head, because it's illegal. You're going to put forward what other people believe. My body, my choice. I can kill this baby because it's in my body. It's not a baby yet. I think that's what you're saying.
I sort of. I'm not. I mean, I wasn't going that far, because I was. I'm unsure.
Let's offend everybody.
I'm unsure myself. Whereas I would agree with you. I mean, the absurdity of that of the woman praying outside the abortion clinic, being arrested, or whatever. I'm totally. I can see exactly where you're coming from. So
there's a man just been found guilty, and he's going for sentencing soon.
Oh, okay. No, I'm just sort of getting into the nitty-gritty of what you were saying about the moment
conception.
The moment of conception. If we are, let's say, for example, if we are children of God, and we or would you say a soul a soul? Well, this is getting more into sort of the reincarnation kind of idea, but.
No, not really. It's even not in reincarnation. The soul is put into that child.
Does that soul pre-exist?
I think I think absolutely, because that is where you stand in judgment. That's where you. I believe. I've reading that it even has a weight. They've weighed bodies, and when that moment of death, and of course, don't forget the heart is the organ guard your heart with all due diligence, for all that is life flows through it. For all that is life flows through it, which is the blood. The life is in the blood. The heart is not a pump. The diaphragm is the pump. The heart stores love. The heart is the electrical part. And when the diaphragm stops working, eventually the heart stops working. So I think one has to take it. If we're going to talk about that, then we have to say then, what is that act of love? What is that when two people come together and they initiate that whole experience together? Because it's not just, it's impossible for it to be just a physical thing, because how many people, men and women, will orgasm when they're asleep? I think everybody, and if you haven't, you've been robbed of having an orgasm in your sleep.
I haven't for a while.
Yeah, but you have, and women do too. Yeah. Women do too, without anyone touching you. It's just from thought, and it's setting an electrical and a chemical response. So I think, two people come together, and you can see somebody. And it doesn't happen as much when you get older. Well, that's mine. But you can see somebody, and then you can be in their presence. And, you only need 15 minutes with somebody. And they could be the most handsome person you've ever met. And within 15 minutes, they're a complete idiot. Or, a beautiful, beautiful woman. And how many supermodels do we know that they were supermodels of their time, yet every fella that ever went out with them dumped them and said what an absolute, awful person they were to be around. So looks is just such a small part of it. It will get you noticed. It will get you through the door. It will get you doors opened for you. But actually, when it comes to attraction, it's about that electrical. It's about suddenly you're on that same electrical vibration as them, and you feel it. Yeah. But anyway, you come together and you have this child, and if the child is born out of love, and then people will then say, well, what about if you're raped? Well, okay, if I'm not saying no, any girl that's raped, she can take the morning after pill. I'm not saying each case has to be looked on as its merit. But I also know a lot of people my very first job, incidentally, was in a gynecology ward where we did suction terminations up to 12 weeks. So I saw a lot of it. I was part of it. I've wept.
Horrific.
Pardon?
Is that pretty horrific?
It is horrific. It's horrific.
Up to 12 weeks.
So this big, beautifully formed, fingers and toes, the sex. It's a perfect little human. It looks like a perfect baby, translucent in the skin. All it's got to now do is grow in size and lay down body fat, white fat and brown fat. And it's horrific because it rips it to pieces. And but I know a lot of people who've had terminations who then regret it when they do have a child. And I know a lovely lady in America who's, at the moment, they've purchased land and they're putting buildings on their land to offer all these young women and young girls who have got pregnant and their families are angry and want them to have a termination, to offer them somewhere to live and a place to learn a skill and to sell their skill. Isn't that what we should be doing? Should we not be saying, well, don't get in the position where you can't help yourself? That's why you have chaperones in a lot of these countries. That's why it doesn't happen.
Oh, yeah.
And it's not an old woman with no teeth and a headscarf. It's your cousins or your siblings that go out with you and make sure that you're not on your own with that person. That's what's done. Yeah. Because I was young once. I know what it's like.
But that's a huge...
It's the lust part of it. It's cultural.
For that to even be on the cards.
So when you say, going back... got to be on your toes when me and my friends come together and have a conversation. It's like
all over the place.
Butterflies, yeah, but we always, going back to what you said, are we lost? Am I lost? And I think we are. I think that people are lost, and I think that generations have come and gone and have been here exactly where we are before. Exactly. Look at the fall of Rome. You just have to look at that and you can see that it's all heading in the exact same direction. So we are lost. We have lost our culture, our identity. We have lost touch with our inner self. We don't hear ourselves anymore. I walk down this hill and everybody's got ear pods in. I mean, never mind that they're streaming EMF straight through the brain.
Mm-hmm.
But they can't even hear themselves think. They can't hear anything. Hopefully they've not got P. Diddy going through their ear holes. I used to like P. Diddy as well. I mean, listen, I fell for it all. So they're not even listening to, they can't even hear themselves speak.
Yeah.
So who is speaking? Who are you talking to when you are on your own? Who is talking to you? Or are you lost?
Download Liberty, the new single from the Blockheads with incredible artwork by legendary freedom artist Bob Moran. Out now on Defiance Records.
So I think that is all about it, isn't it? It's to find the Christ within.
Yeah, I mean, we're not really encouraged to talk to God as children. It's something that I say to Mackie, my son, just like if he asks me a question that I can't answer, I say, well, just ask God.
Yeah, ask yourself.
And I wouldn't call myself a Christian, so I'm not necessarily talking in those terms. But I don't think my kind of take on the world is that different from. What do you think of the term Christian? It's quite interesting because I was talking with a Catholic the other day, and she wouldn't describe herself as Christian. And I've always thought, well, Christ didn't actually call himself a Christian. And is that something? What's your take on your beliefs and what you see manifested in reality in terms of the sort of the dogma and the structure of the church and all that kind of stuff? How do you sit your beliefs with it?
Well, I'm good friends with Mother General, and
I don't know
at Tyburn. Do you know what Tyburn is?
No.
Shame on you. I didn't know until 2020. I only knew a little bit of it. Tyburn. So when people would, in fact, there's a wonderful documentary, and I'm going to put it on my website. How do I know it's wonderful? Because I made it with Charlie Ponderici, who filmed and edited it. It's fantastic. And the starring role in it was not me, it was the nuns at Tyburn. It's an hour-long documentary. Absolutely fantastic. KateShemirani.com, which it will eventually be live. I'm going to put it on there. It is on Rumble. Actually, I never put anything on Rumble, but I'm about to put everything on there. It is on there. So Tyburn was a small village, and it was the first village you hit on your way to London. And they used to hang people in Tyburn, and you would be hung, you would stand on the back of a horse and cart, and then the horse would drive away and you would dangle until you were dead. And this proved to be a very successful place for hanging naughty people and those who hung around with naughty people, which is the term, you're judged by those you hang with. And so they built a structure called the three-legged mare. And they built this structure, which was a drop box method, where you'd have this noose put around your neck, and then the floor would drop from beneath you, and you would drop into the gap, and you would die. You'd struggle a bit. And this is where all the hangings were done. And on the day of these hangings, it would be a great celebration. And all the businesses would close, and you could bring out your wares and sell. Sorry, all the workplaces would close, but all the public houses, the pubs, would be opened, and all of the traders would come out and have their stores, and the children, and they would have a flyer, and the flyer would have the people that were going to be hanged, but they would have the headliner on it, and all the political dissidents would be hanged. And you would be sat on a cart with your executioner and some guards, and you'd be taken to the public houses along the way. So often by the time many of them reached the three-legged mare, they'd be drunk. And the crowd would all be there and their children watching it. It was a great day. And you would give a speech. And if you gave a good speech, the crowd would cheer you. And if you were a political prisoner who was going to be hanged, this would be your last pitch to, COVID's a lie.
Yeah.
The governments are tyrants. And there are only two genders. This would be your time to say, you can say what you are, but I don't have to believe it.
What year are we talking?
Now you're asking me. Go to Tyburn and pick
Okay.
up the booklet called
Oh, Martha.
A Martyr, The Martyrs of Tyburn. Thank you.
Okay.
Do forgive me, Mother General. So during this time, it was, and then of course, if you weed yourself and cried, they'd be booing you. The fickle public.
Right.
Nothing's changed. So during this time, this was the Reformation of the Church. So you had Henry VIII, who was married to Catherine of Aragon, and he was given the highest accolade of the Catholic Church, which was Defender of the Faith.
Okay.
And this was put on the coins. But of course, he saw the very beguiling and slutty Anne Boleyn, who was very young. I think, what was she, 22? My goodness.
Yeah.
And he didn't want to behead Catherine of Aragon. He did respect her. So he wanted to divorce her. So in order to do this, he had to set up his own church, the Church of England, and put himself as the head. How very dare he? And that's what we're left with today.
Yeah.
Is it all sounding familiar? And during that time, of course, the priests were forbidden to offer the body and the blood of Christ, which is your Holy Communion. And this is where all the hidey holes were then, in the big houses of the rich, where they would hide these priests. They would have these hidey holes under the stairs. And people would be visited. And if they weren't seen in a Protestant church, at least twice a month, they would receive great hefty fines that could bankrupt them. Do you see the familiarity here? The familiar, if you don't have the COVID shot, if you don't wear a mask, if you don't convert to that you believe in COVID and do all your virtue signalling, we're going to fine you £10,000 or £1,000 for going out and not obeying this 6 foot apart in groups of 6. So the priests that were caught or they were betrayed were hanged and drawn and quartered. So they would be dragged from Marble Arch along the floor by horse, and they would be ripped and tattered to Tyburn, where they would be hanged with robbers. And then they would be cut down. Now that land became very sacred, and it was given, and it had to have a chapel built on it. So it was given to the Benedictine closed order of the nuns, and they have got a convent there today and a chapel, and it's directly opposite Hyde Park. It is wonderful. They are wonderful, wonderful, unjabbed.
Oh, right.
Nuns.
Yeah. No, it's ringing a bell, actually.
And
They spoke.
I must go and visit them because they are very hospitable. I've had dinner there many, many times, and
Yeah.
I've done many talks, lectures in the chapel on natural health. And I took Dr. Carrie Midday, and I were there as well. If you ever want me to do a talk in here, I'll come and do talks on nutrition for you in here.
Oh, that'd be great, actually.
I absolutely.
Yeah, I'd like to actually concentrate more on what you're saying.
I actually
point.
really, because I love doing it. And all I ask is that they do a whip round afterwards and pay my petrol. I love doing it. And I went to one place for months and months. There was not much else I would love it.
Yeah.
I'm going into London to do one for, it's a big one. They're doing a live interview, but I do all that. It's about me, and I don't want to talk about me. I want to impart the knowledge that God gave me this fantastic brain to soak up. You know what I do? It's you can do it. I read it, and then I always rest. I do coffee enemas, and I put it in a drawer in my head, so it's really easy for me to open the drawers as I'm talking and take it out and read it.
Is that when you say you put it in a drawer in your head? You visualize, it's like a technique.
It's really easy. So when I'm thinking and I want to talk about something, I take out the document and read it.
That doesn't sound that simple. That sounds like
it's very easy.
Magic, but
it's very easy. So you could look at a photograph,
yeah,
and then you could put it in a drawer in your head, and then write on that drawer what is in it, and then later when you come to paint it, you just get it out of the drawer and paint it. You won't need to look at anybody. If you do it more and more, you'll be able to do it with such ease.
Okay.
You will.
Is that a technique that you've developed or come across, or?
I don't know. It just always
just makes
serves
sense to
me.
you?
For instance, I always say, vitamin B17. I went to America, and G. Edward Griffin, I said this on the stage, and he went, and I interviewed him before it as well, and he went, oh my gosh. And then Dr. Richardson's son, who now owns the B17 company, I've just done some business with them and got all my own labels. And they're about to do a big launch on it. He said, John Richardson Jr., he said, how you just reel it off. And of course I'm not, I'm reading it. So
Right.
So
are you
vitamin,
reading-
so
okay.
vitamin B17 has 4 molecules: glucose, benzaldehyde, cyanide. The benzaldehyde and cyanide are completely inert, they're inactive. When they come into contact with beta-glucosidase, which is found in 3,000 times greater quantities in cancer cells, synergy occurs, they go into the cell, they kill it, then they filter through the liver where they regulate blood pressure, they act as an analgesic, a painkiller, and they act as an antiseptic. So as I'm telling you that, in my head is the diagram, and I'm working myself around the diagram.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
So it's
Sounds
quite
impressive.
easy.
Yeah.
It's quite an easy way of studying and learning.
So would you say you're a visual person then?
I don't know.
Probably.
We're all visual. Actually, but you talk about that as well, visual. Our eyes are merely windows, and it all goes on at the back of the brain. The centre is at the back of the brain. So our eyes don't see anything. It's the back of the brain, and then the rest of the brain. And of course, the pineal gland, which is very cleverly calcified with, that cluster bomb of aluminium, fluoride, glyphosate, and 2.45 to 5.8 gigahertz, which opens the blood-brain barrier, which is Wi-Fi, which we were tricked to bring into our homes, that weapon. That's exactly what it is. So when you bring those 4 things together, you've got the perfect storm. Anyway, you calcify that pineal gland, and that's your iCloud. There's even this, that the brain doesn't actually store memories. They're stored outside of the brain.
Yeah.
And this is the channel that's blocked that brings it in.
So that.
So when I learn, when I'm remembering something, when I am asked to recall, like my sister and I were recalling the day that my dad hired this really old tatty bus, round about the Queen's Jubilee it was, and where we lived, we had a street party, and then my parents were on the committee, and they organised. It was in Nottingham, Hucknall, a mining town. They organised a trip to Blackpool on a coach, but my dad was the one with the heavy goods licence, and he came with this rickety bus that had a new engine. So funny. But we were recalling this, and I said to my sister, "Gosh, do you remember those outfits?" And my sister said, "How can you remember all that?" She said, "I'm looking at the photographs. How do you recall that all?"
Right.
So I remembered, the outfits, who was with me, the smell, the noise, all of it, the whole thing, like a moving video.
Right,
It's a
okay.
great way to recall more and more. And we forget it. We don't practice it. This is what I'm saying to all of us. We're all fabulous. Everybody is so perfect. But we stop practicing. And this lovely young man that's just come in, children, when they learn other languages, they don't learn to translate it before the age of 8 years old. They just learn it as new words. So if you
Right.
exposed a child to 10 languages before the age of 8, they'll speak them all, and beautifully. But after that,
It's hard work.
the whole process of they stop doing fantasy play because of that brainwave that they're in. Jose Silva is another one. If you go and look up Jose Silva, the Silva technique, what he did with his
That's the
children.
guy you mentioned. That's bizarre, isn't it?
About it on the way here.
Were you really? But it's not weird. It's serendipity. You were talking about it because I was about to mention it. And I'm about to mention it because you were talking about it. Because we've all come into alignment because we're all in the same space and we all clearly have familiar beliefs.
Yeah.
And we're all kind of drawn to each other now, aren't
Yeah.
we? You're drawn to me, I'm drawn to you, I'm
Yeah.
drawn to you, and remarkably drawn to your son. But he's only gifted to you for now.
Yeah.
Once
yeah.
he reaches,
Yeah,
13, 14, that's, which in Jewish culture, where they have the bar mitzvah,
Yeah. Yeah.
they, and in many cultures actually, where the young boys go out with the men, that is when, in the boys' grammar school, they call it the terrible year 9s, because they're not yours anymore. They start to develop and start to, their attitudes are really, really challenged by their peers, and they start to become who they are. And we might not like them.
Yeah.
And they might not like us.
Yeah.
They might never like us. They might not want to be with us. But are we lost? That takes us back to that we get into big, deep trouble if we don't follow what is written in many cultures and many scriptures of honour thy parents and why we should do it. And why in the book of Revelation it talks about the time will come when daughters will turn against their mothers and sons
What's
against
your
fathers.
definition of honour?
Honour.
In that sense?
Well, you might not like what your parents' beliefs are. You might not agree with them, but you should give them the respect that they gave birth to you, they raised you, they fed you, they kept you safe, they hopefully nurtured you, they protected you, they loved you, they instilled hopefully virtues that are pure in you. They hopefully taught you to be impeccable with your word and to always walk in righteousness and not to suffer idolatry, to idolize money and fame and, hopefully. So regardless of what your own beliefs are, you should still have that respect for your parents, that when you step over the lintel to their home, that you, for that moment, you respect them. And also there has to be a certain amount of respect coming back the way, otherwise.
Yeah.
We all know, we've all done it, I've done it, or we all learn. This is what I'm saying about, now, even now, it's an evolution, isn't it? We learn. Doesn't come. You can have as many parenting books as you like. I liked Stephen Biddulph, Raising Boys.
Raising Boys, yeah.
It's a great book. Boys do better with dads, if they're good dads, than being left only with single women. They need a man, be it an uncle, be it somebody in their life, a grandfather that will guide them.
Yeah. Not
just emotive banshee women, which we've all been.
Yeah, I think that's one of the big problems, isn't it? That,
role
models aren't there for children.
And the emasculation of men.
Yeah.
I see them at Marks and Spencer's parked on a chair wearing a pink sweater that their wives picked for them. And they're waiting for their wife while she's trying things on a Saturday. What bloke wants to be in M&S on a Saturday with his wife? I don't know many real blokes who'd want to be. They really wouldn't. And what woman wants to take a man shopping? I thought you were supposed to go shopping and not tell them the price. Myself, personally.
I just sort of lost it deja vu then.
Oh, did you? Do tell.
Is that bit you were saying about the man on the bench and the pink jumper? I was like, I've heard you say that sitting there before.
I have said it in lots of places.
Oh, have you?
Yeah, because it is. Every time I see it, I walked past a restaurant in Eastbourne, and I doubt this couple will ever be watching this. And I parked myself somewhere because I was fascinated by these people, and they were wearing matching sweaters, and they were probably in their 60s, and they were eating their food, and he had half a lager, she had a glass of wine. They were very smartly dressed. And then when they'd finished, they both got out their phone, and I don't think they uttered a word to one another at all.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh, yeah, leave your phones at home. We actually survive without them. We don't die. Yeah, this would be great to do a talk in here. It's just big enough.
Yeah, it's a nice. Yeah, we've had lots of nice.
I have a big whiteboard as well. We have great fun.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that'd be great.
I bring the whiteboard
Yeah.
and I put it up, but it's quite entertaining then.
Oh, that sounds great.
Do you know what it is yet? Although you can't really use that phrase anymore, can you?
No. Well, you can. Yeah. I don't know. I've got a suspicion Rolf wasn't.
Well, Michael Jackson wasn't, apparently.
Yeah,
It's all coming out now, isn't it?
Oh, is it?
Yeah, he was telling them what they were doing. And he kind of took the fall for it. If you look at how he died anyway, though, he was given a massive dose of an anaesthetic drug.
I don't know.
How can you possibly make that mistake?
Yeah, that rings. Oh, yeah. Wasn't it similar with Prince?
His doctor, yeah. Oh, I liked his music, apart from when he became a symbol. What was all that about? I'm no longer Prince. I'm a symbol. I can't watch any. I find all of it so vulgar and crass now. Watching what was a beautiful voice in a young man dressed in a suit. Now watching that same young man looking like four pigs fighting under a blanket, trussed up with bondage.
Oh, you're talking about
I wasn't going to say his name, but I think everybody can guess. But
Yeah, okay.
watching the performance in front of children, it's not his fault if your children are seeing it. It's yours for taking them.
Yeah.
Why is anyone listening to it and even giving these people airtime anymore? Actually, that's what I think of Twitter lately. It's turned into a bit of an echo chamber. I liked Twitter. I got banned. I was not long on Twitter, and then I got kicked off all social media within a day, I think it was, and then Twitter later. And then all of a sudden, I got my Twitter account back. I just wrote to them, and I got it back.
Oh, okay.
And I got it back a year or so ago. And I think it was 20,000 when I had it, and it's about just under 64 or something now. Anyway, doesn't really matter. But I used to get slaughtered on it. Now I don't. It was almost better when it was quite entertaining when people were being so rude and obnoxious, and you could just kill them with kindness.
Right, yeah.
Or I shouldn't say kill them, kill their words
Yeah.
with kindness. I don't want to kill anybody, but yeah, now it's very few now, which tells me that either people aren't seeing your stuff. And some of my stuff want like 5 million views. Some of my stuff really goes around. Yeah, it's turned into a little bit of an echo chamber. I wonder if all these things are really just to smoke out dissident.
Well, you have to ask that question, don't you? But
And
who knows?
also they take up so much of your time. They stop you from actually finding yourself and not being lost.
Yeah. Well, Twitter in particular, I mean, I rarely go on there, but it's very dark. Like with the stuff that comes up in my feed is anyway. I mean, it's just I go on there and it's just people beating the shit out of each
Yeah, I
other.
don't look at it. I don't watch. I'm on Telegram as well, and I'm on some Iranian channels. It's good because although I can't read Farsi, but I can understand a lot of Farsi, and I can
Okay.
speak some Farsi as well.
Uh-huh.
But I watch some of that, and I also read the Moscow Times. I've started reading the Moscow Times, the Russian newspapers.
Okay.
Quite interesting. But I watch a couple of TV channels, and if the image is pixelated or they do this thing, a sparkly thing, I don't press on it to see it. I don't need to see sex on a TV screen.
Mm-hmm.
And I wasn't brought up looking at that. Whenever there was TV programs on, you didn't see anything like that. You'd see the couple going into the room and the door would shut, and
Yeah,
the rest
of
you
course,
made your
yeah.
mind up. But it's the same with violence. I don't want to watch violence. And when I see violence that's actually real, amongst school kids, it's the more you see it, you become desensitized to it.
Yeah.
This is what's happening.
Yeah.
There was a gentleman with his wife and toddler in a pushchair at some cafe in America recently, and somebody had started wielding a knife, and he'd intervened. He'd got his wife and child there, and he was and they stabbed him, and he literally died. He bled out on the floor. So they must have hit a major blood vessel in his abdomen. And this footage that then appeared was somebody filming it, and they were laughing. Going, look at that! Look, he's literally dying, and people were laughing. And I thought, oh my word, what would I have done when I know what I would do, because I've been in very serious life-threatening situations, both with work and not at work, and involving my own daughter. And I know exactly what I do, and my friends will testify. They know what I do in situations like that. I'm the most pragmatic person you'll get. I don't panic.
Right.
I go into auto.
Right.
But what would I do? I would have intervened. Well, obviously, lots of men could have ran at that guy with a table and took him out. with the knife. You could have just picked up a table and ran at him. It would have protected
Sure.
you. And if everybody did it, he'd have been, rendered
Yeah.
out of it. But the man who was on the floor, nobody helped him. And his poor wife was there screaming.
Oh, God.
And I thought, is this where we're at, where it's better to watch someone die and film it
Yeah.
and put it out on the internet than
Yeah.
actually throw your phone aside and everybody tank in?
Yeah.
So I find that on Twitter, what you're talking about, it's voyeurism, isn't it? It's desensitizing everybody. It's making people accept that it's okay. But also it's making you think that that is what's going on everywhere and that the
Yeah, I
world
think
is a
that's-
very dangerous place, and it isn't.
Yeah, I think that's a part of it. I do,
It
I do
isn't.
think that, yeah.
I've just walked down the road from the car park down to here. I've been in a coffee shop. They would have you believe that it's a zoo out there and you can't do that. It's
Yeah.
dangerous.
Yeah,
So I think there's an element of that as well.
definitely.
And actually, myself and my friend, we got off the wrong train and got on another train and got off another wrong train, and we ended up in an area which was it was very high. Pakistani and Indians lived there, and this is a taxi driver, a lovely Muslim taxi driver, told us, and we walked down the road, and there were lots of not graffiti, but signs that were up about, not being violent. And then we went into this very small, sort of dingy hotel, which was the wrong place where we were. And the lady in there and I was very dressed up, and my friend was very dressed up, and I had a laptop with me. And she said, "What are you doing here? You shouldn't be here." And anyway, she got us a taxi, and we were in the taxi with the taxi driver. And he was so lovely, and he was telling us it was his last job, and he had to go and make sure that his 3 sons were all back in the house by 5 p.m. because it was very dangerous for them in this area. I'm not even going to say the area, but what was interesting was we'd got off the train and we'd walked, and I'd gone into a barber's and said, "Oh, excuse me, guys, could you tell me where such and such is?" And they all looked at me, and I was the only Caucasian in there, but they were really polite. And then I walked further and I went into like a place where they were doing car repairs and said, "I'm looking for such and such. Do you know where it is? Excuse me, sir." And they told me, and I carried on walking. And I wasn't expecting anybody to do anything to me, and
No.
they didn't. And they were all very polite. And it was only the woman in the hotel who was like, "Oh my gosh, you shouldn't be here."
Yeah.
But that was very interesting for me that we were fine. And I clearly had a laptop in a laptop case, and then we went. And then the taxi driver told us this about what happens in their own community. And I thought, gosh, that's very interesting. How is that happening? Who is instigating that? What is behind that? What money is behind that? What powers in charge are behind that? And also looking at, the UN numbers for today of our population and where the population is coming from and what they're actually doing. Please look on my Twitter feed, Kate, I think it's at Kate Shemirani. I tend to post all stuff like that with the documents. That's all on there.
If you'd like to support 1,000 Words on Patreon, please go to the link in the description. You get access to exclusive behind-the-scenes interviews and merchandise, as well as advanced news on up-and-coming episodes and events.
So the whole race thing, obviously, it's huge at the moment. How much of that do you think is created by the media, and how much is
All of it, by
all of it?
design. I'm married an Iranian. I've got 4 mixed race children. 1 was blonde, the other 3 are dark. I never noticed really when it was just the 2 of us. I think race is different to culture. Culture is very different. When you marry into culture, it's very, very different.
Right.
And that's where people get into a lot of problems. Young girls, Western girls that are wearing, crop tops and low-cut tops and makeup, going out with a young man from a culture where only their husband should see that. I think you're immediately going to get into trouble.
Yeah.
So that's culture. But race, I worked in the busiest A&E in Europe, in Nottingham for 5 years. It doesn't matter what race you are, when you cut yourself, you will bleed exactly the same colour. You've all got exactly the same organs. You break just the same. You die just the same. You're born just the same. The only difference is how you conduct yourself during intense stress. That is led by culture.
Okay, that's interesting.
Well, for instance, in the Pakistani faith, and a lot of Middle Eastern cultures, it's their faith that when someone dies, that they are very loud in their grief.
Right,
And
yes.
that might be mocked by some Western cultures, but that's their culture, and it would be considered very disrespectful
Yeah.
not to be loud. Then when you look at some of the Eastern European faiths, some of their faiths, they're very private in their grief. It's a very private affair, very quiet. That they'll observe a certain amount of mourning and clothing and being quiet. So I think it's cultures and customs. It's very different how they respond when someone is ill or injured or dies
Yeah.
or even being born. I was watching an interview with Tom Cruise, and then I can't even remember where it popped up. I think it might have been on Instagram. Telegram. It's called The Conspiracy Hole. I do like that channel. But anyway, it was Tom Cruise and Scientology. And it was very interesting when he was talking about mental health. I have to agree with him. But also he was talking about giving birth and how they like everything to be quite quiet. And
Yeah, I saw something about the
Yeah,
silent
and
birth. John Travolta talking about the silent birth.
yeah, and I have to say, please do look up a lady called Nikita. She's a beautiful, beautiful young woman with an exquisite voice. But she began her business called When Push Comes to Shove. Please do make sure this goes out.
Yeah, okay.
I'll actually introduce you to her. She'd be wonderful for you to pay.
Okay. Yeah.
She started this When Push Comes to Shove about birthing and making sure women deliver babies the way they should, and not cutting the cord, allowing the babies to get the stem cells, getting all their circulation.
Yeah.
She is a font of knowledge, incredible. But of course, she talks about when babies are born into where it's quiet and there's not bright lights, and what it does to that baby. So I think, I'd have to agree with some of what they say in Scientology, because when you have your baby with all that noise and the machines beeping and the bright light, and
Oh, yeah.
it's horrific.
What a way to
Absolutely.
come into the world.
And also when the baby's born, and the diaphragm, and how the diaphragm then has to push the abdominal contents down. Don't put your babies in walkers and bouncers.
Yeah.
You should never do that. It's absolutely never do it.
Yeah.
They'll have a weak diaphragm, and then you're going to get into so many problems later in life with the lymphatic system won't work properly, so you'll get stagnation, you'll get dis-ease. Anyway, but yeah, I think there's a lot to be said for quiet birth.
Yeah.
And there'll be people throwing their slippers at the screen as I say it. How dare she? So when you talk about race
why
and
do you
culture,
say that? In fact, I think I think most people would, especially people who would be watching this, would be very open to the idea that
yeah, I think
modern birthing is
I've had 4. The first one I had in the hospital, and everything went textbook, and then I ended up having epidural, stirrups, ventouse, episiotomy.
Yeah.
Even though it was all going well, the second 2 I had 5.5 weeks early by caesarean section, and the last one I had on the bedroom floor in my house that I'd only moved into 10 weeks prior, and I had 3 contractions as I was standing up, and her head was in my hands when the midwives arrived, and I gave birth to her on my picnic mat that I'd bought in Asda a decade earlier, and I still use that picnic mat today, washed clean at 40 degrees. And it was a textbook birth. The waters went first, and she was born, and she was perfect, and breastfed and slept, and there was nothing wrong. It's great. So I think everybody. And then I got up and mopped the floor downstairs because it was winter, December 3rd, and the cats had all been in. cooked, showered. And then the doctor came at 2 in the afternoon and said, "Did you have a baby this morning?"
Who were you with? Your husband at the time?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'd got him to take the other 3 out. He'd taken the other 3 down to Fort Fun at Eastbourne. And so the doctor came in the afternoon about 2 o'clock, and he came to the back door, which I thought was odd. And we'd been moved in this new house, and he came in, he said, "You got the baby this morning?"
Yeah.
I said, "I did, yes, but can you take your shoes off, because I've just mopped." And we laughed about that later on as well.
Yeah.
It's not an illness, ladies. It's something people have been doing since we were here.
Yeah.
It's not an illness. You don't need to go into a hospital to have a baby. You're more likely to have medical intervention. And that's what Nikita will tell you from when push comes to shove.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, I remember listening to a woman a few years ago, I can't remember her name, American woman, and she was talking about how that it's all part of the, well, she was Christian, but she was talking about the satanic agenda in the whole birthing program, and how that childhood trauma is just embedded from the moment we.
Well, it takes a huge portion of the child's blood. It robs them of their stem cells, which is going to then rob them of what we call immunity later in life.
Yeah.
Those stem cells are now all placed in a bank, a stem cell bank. It's disgusting. And for eternal youth, of course. And the whole, the way it's done, the way they put you, the fact you're on your back because it suits the doctors, not because that's the way you should be giving birth. It's the worst position.
Yeah.
It's more painful, so you're in a lot more pain.
Yeah.
And the diaphragm of the child. It's if you have a cesarean section, that diaphragm is going to be weak from the word go. And it is the diaphragm that is life. It's the diaphragm that they paralyze when they do chemical executions. It's the diaphragm that they paralyzed when they put you on a ventilator. It's the diaphragm that they paralyzed when they gave all the elderly 5 to 7 times the dose of midazolam, mixed with morphine to give it that nice synergistic, even more powerful effect that they're still doing.
The diaphragm.
The diaphragm is the pump. It's the diaphragm. It's the most fantastic organ in the human body. And it connects to everything. Everything. Paralyze the diaphragm and you'll stop what's effectively life.
Right, okay. Interesting.
So when they talk about brainstem death, they do the most dinosaurs. There's a lie. But anyway, when they do the brainstem test, it's the most ridiculous test. Rub your eyeball with a piece of gauze, squirt some iced water into your ear, press on areas of your head that are supposed to get a pain response. Remove your vent tube, that's good when they're paralysing you, when actually the drugs that they're giving you are paralysing your diaphragm, which they say, well, they're going to be out the body now. Well, no, they don't. You only have to go on PubMed to find endless studies that those drugs will still be in the body a long time. But they do this ridiculous test. It's like theatre. And yet we're supposed to believe that that's the only way they can test. And yet they're doing CRISPR gene editing at the cost of 1.6 million that they're going to offer to families that have had pregnancies and live births with their cousins. And they've now got genetic genes that are expressing that they don't want to. So I find it ridiculous that they expect us to believe that this is how they test and that they will try to convince you that even though your heart is beating, your circulation is working, that your kidneys are still producing urine, that you are still able to digest this liquid feed, but they're telling you that you're brain dead, that you're dead. No, you're not. You're either dead or you're alive. That nothing in between. Your heart wouldn't be beating if you were dead. And a lot of their drugs that they give you suppress brain activity.
Yeah.
So it's not going to show on an EEG. The entire thing is a lie. And if you don't think it's all connected to this satanic agenda, 22nd of May, 2020, everyone became an organ donor in the UK unless you opt out. And do you think that's not related? How come They do this at the same time as they bring in messenger RNA. You've got cardiac arrests across cities through the roof. You've got cardiac arrests in young people that was never seen before. The pathologists are reporting on it. Who makes the best organ donors? Under 30, with a beating heart, with a circulation, on a ventilator. What are the big university hospitals doing? Extending their critical care units. This is all linked. It's all linked. Actually, the whole organ donor thing, and when they did it with the heart transplant in South Africa, that's all a lie as well. They lied to come up with the brain dead stories then, and they used these two infants, didn't they, and put the heart of one into the other, and they both died, which was then it was against the law, so they had to come up with this lie that being brain dead.
Okay. Yeah.
I can't remember, it's escaped me. I'll have to find that drawer in my head. The doctor that did the first heart transplant. Actually, people have said to me on Twitter, if you needed a kidney, you wouldn't be saying that. No, I wouldn't be at the stage where I need a kidney, because your kidneys will tell you when things are going wrong. And one of the things I would say to anyone with kidney problems is you need to then move away from animal protein, go on an absolute clean, plant-based, mucusless diet, and certainly stay on that for quite a while and take the load off your kidneys.
Oh, okay.
But they never tell you that. It's interesting. I've asked many patients with kidney problems, does your urologist tell you not to eat ABC? No, nothing at all. And I think it was Dr. Suzanne Humphreys, who was a urologist, noticed that when her patients came in and they were given these flu shots, they suffered terribly. So she became anti-vax and wrote the book, Dissolving Illusions. Thank you. And is now berated the world over for the most incredible book. All reference-based, incredible book.
Yeah.
I've been interviewed by, and I've interviewed Andrew Wakefield. Incredible. So all modern medicine, I'm sorry to bring it to you folks, but it's an inversion. You've been lied to. It's all a lie. What they do is they throw you the odd story so that you think it's great, it's fantastic, so you keep parting with your taxes to pay for it all.
Yeah, the whole NHS...
The National Homicide Service.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing because it's so culturally embedded in British
It's a cult.
society, isn't it? Yeah.
It's a cult.
And we're all like, well, we
It's
weren't.
seal clapping on a Thursday night. It's a cult.
It was literally seal clapping, wasn't it?
It was ranked in the lowest third in the world for treatments available, treatment outcomes, treatments available, waiting times, and on a par with a poor Eastern Bloc country. It is a cult. And to give it a 6-coloured rainbow next to it during the last 4 years should tell you everything, and should make you go and look at the Noah Hyde laws. If you don't know what they are, please do go and look them up.
Yeah, no, I know. What? Go on, explain. Say a bit about what the
Noah Hyde laws. Well, every American president has signed up for them. They're the laws where you get decapitated. It's death by decapitation. If you're a Christian, a Muslim, if you commit adultery, if you're homosexual, many other things are on there. I think there are 40. It's not guillotine. It's guillotine.
Right.
I always say guillotine, but it is guillotine. I think America's got 14,000. I was reading recently the French had purchased one. Ooh,
What?
getting a bit interesting.
Guillotine.
Yes.
Oh, really?
It's getting a bit interesting now.
Okay.
But yes, the Noah Hyde laws. So the why put a rainbow? Why put a rainbow with 6 colours next to the NHS? And why were the NHS in 2020 allowing businesses to come onto the NHS website to advertise themselves if they gave a discount to the staff? That's racketeering right there. And of course, I had porters coming and telling me, and managers and nurses telling me that they were fighting over the food parcels. One nurse from Brighton said that they were playing Connect 4 on the paediatric wards. I've never known paediatric departments in A&E to be quiet. I worked in adult A&E, but they were never quiet. And yet, a junior sister from London took photographs and videos of the waiting rooms in a hospital in London, the paediatric A&E, and they were empty. And they always used to say, the nurses did, they'd rather see 100 children with nothing wrong with them, just with worried mums, than one child die. So, so for paediatric units to be empty means that something is absolutely fundamentally wrong. And I wonder how many children suffered as a consequence of you liars out there who were paid 30 pieces of silver and kept your lying, cheating gobs shut. And that includes the midwives in Nottingham who wouldn't inject themselves or their children with the COVID shot, but worked in the vaccine clinics at the Queen's Medical Centres for Christmas money. You know who you are, and you'll be answering in judgment for that in this life and the next. I don't get that. I lost my license, my business, my reputation, I suppose some would say. Others would say, no, I didn't. I don't care who says that. My neighbours didn't speak to me for a while. Lots of people mocked me. Would I do it all again? Yes, I would, and louder, with knobs on.
I don't doubt it, yeah.
Absolutely, I don't care. I couldn't stay quiet for what is a lie. Especially when doctors began telling me that they were witnessing murder, and nurses. And one, a student nurse, told me something which was just horrific, harrowing, horrific. And she suffers PTSD as a consequence. Yeah, she's not a student nurse anymore. Terrible. She was told, ordered out of a room with the sister or the nurse in charge clicking her fingers doing this. And one has to say, well, why would she do that? I think she did that so that patient wouldn't recognise her voice, just in case she ever did live to tell the tale. And those patients were left in their urine and faeces. They were not to be changed, and they were not to be given anything to eat and drink, even if they cried. And some of those patients were begging for a drink.
Yeah.
Those elderly.
Yeah.
And they were put in rooms, and their deaths were then COVID deaths. They were murdered.
Yeah.
Who would do that? Who believes that they have the authority over the sanctity of life? Well, we're going to see it more because we now have 37% of our nurses come from a Casium worldwide agency, paid £1,200 a shift. The agency gets 800. That's $1.5 million a year for a registered nurse post, which would normally be under 28k, but we're paying for it as taxpayers. Less nurses being trained in the UK, more nurses coming from this agency. Lots of nurses coming from India as well, where they practice assisted dying.
Yeah.
And so it's very natural for them to, we're going to adopt the Norway, where you get put in a death room, where you just get left till you die. You fade away and die.
What is that? What's happening in Norway?
They have these rooms, I think they're dying rooms or something. We also have here, don't we? We have the Marie Curie got together with John Ellishaw, I think it was last year or the end of the year before, and that would be last year, and they had the 365-day a year, 24 hours a day, golden line, where you can ring up for the end of life pack. And it has, your benzodiazepines, your opioids in, hyoscine or a similar drug that dries up the secretion so you don't hear your loved one with the death rattle.
Sure.
And you can give that in the home, so you can ring up.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah.
That's handy, isn't it?
My husband's got a sore toe. Well, don't worry, madam, we'll send out that end of life care pack. Oh, it's not going to kill him, is it? You're not going to kill him, are you? No, dear, you are.
Yeah.
It's a bit like that. Or the neighbour. Or
And
anyone
people
else
will do it. I mean,
they will. They'll think they're that classic making them comfortable. If you hear making them comfortable, you need to get your loved one and get the hell out of there, or get whoever is in your house. Somebody who was a client of mine told me that whilst their relative, their parent, was in the last throes of life with a syringe driver up in the house, receiving benzodiazepines and opioids, they actually died the next day. The two nurses came from the surgery with the COVID booster and were shouting through the letterbox, letters in, or we're going to get the police.
oh my God.
Because, of course, the GP surgery gets the money then, and she didn't let them in. But this is what they would do. I mean, I would have opened the door and they'd have been off my property that fast.
Yeah.
Oh, that fast. They'd have been seeking legal advice, very swift. You just have to think, don't you? Do these nurses have brains? No, I'm sorry to bring it to you, most of them do not, or certainly not ones that they are engaging. Otherwise, they won't do half that they do.
Yeah.
Or even injecting any child with any poison. Don't just talk about the COVID shots. They're all poison. Not one of them has been proven safe. Not one of them has been proven effective. And none of them are being tested together. What happens if you give them all at once, but they still do it?
Absolutely.
Shocking.
Totally
And your
agree.
pets. Wonderful book out there called The Tip of the Needle. The lady who wrote it unfortunately has died, but her wonderful husband gave me a signed copy. The Tip of the Needle. Do not inject your pets. Nellie, my dog's had none, and she's 6
Yeah.
and is fighting fit. Never been
Yeah.
seen. Absolute fun. Oh, runny eyes once. As soon as I gave her a ceramic bowl, she was fine.
Yeah. 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 No, I'm 100% in agreement about the vaccines. I mean, because when Mackie was born, and I kind of knew I didn't want to give him any, but I thought, with family and everything, I need to really know what I'm talking about. So I dived in, and my sort of criteria was basically, if it wasn't around when I was young, leave it. If it's newer than if it's newer than 2 years, leave it. If it's not particularly dangerous, what they're saying it prevents, leave it. I think I went through the whole list, even just on that criteria. None of them were of any use whatsoever.
They do, and they're not. They kill you immediately, shortly after, but they will truncate your life. And one of the most horrific is the TB shot, which they've injected into everybody. They're injecting into all of the immigrants that are coming in. TB is going through the roof. It's not TB. Because what is TB? And what's happening is when you increase the EMF, what we call virus, fungus, mold, bacteria will proliferate in an attempt to survive. So when you inject someone with TB, which used to be 2 to 8 million live bacteria, it lays dormant in the body, in the bone marrow, in the chest, in the pelvis, and then you bring in the EMF, which is happening now, or their patient constitution goes down, it's going to become active, and you're going to start seeing TB. TB in the mediastinum, TB in the bones, TB everywhere. And of course, what is TB? Professor Arnold Ehret will just tell you that it's stagnation in the lymphatic system.
Okay.
And what's really interesting is the markers, for instance, for TB were then used in 2001 for lymphoma. And lymphoma, leukemia, and what they described as AIDS, which we know that was Anthony Fauci who renamed leukocytopenia AIDS. But those diseases didn't come about till after 1970, when the Department of Defense was given this $10 million to develop something so deadly that we wouldn't be able to fight against it. And then you saw lymphomas. But now they're saying that everything is cancer. Incidentally, the people that choose the markers to say that it's this particular disease are the pharmaceutical companies.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So, if you believe that you need to go and have your doctor stick his finger up your rear end to check your prostate because you've reached a certain age, or you need to go and have this ridiculous test, the prostate-specific antigen, you're deluded. Go and get the book, The PSA Lie. I've just loaned it to somebody. I haven't even read it myself yet, but I didn't need to read it because I already knew it.
Yeah.
I bought it to loan to somebody. It's all a lie. It's all a lie, because if you autopsied all old men, they would have enlarged prostate. Actually, if you're a fella watching this, zinc and sal palmetto. Sal palmetto in studies has been shown to be exponentially improve the health of your prostate gland, and be it prostatitis, enlarged prostate, and also zinc inhibits the enzyme that converts your good testosterone into the bad one that causes that inflammation. And zinc is being used for industrial purposes, so we haven't got, I think we've got about 21 years worth of zinc left in the soil, and glyphosate stops the plants taking up zinc. So your plants are already deficient when they reach your table. So eat pumpkin seeds, supplement with zinc, and sal palmetto if you're a fella.
Okay.
Get all bits in fabulous info
I know.
in one interview. Think
joke.
what you could get if I do a chat. Start from the head and go down.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I mean, we've been on a sort of natural health
Are you learning something?
deep dive. Yeah, but always learning, and that's the thing. You know, it's
never
it's
stop.
fascinating. And what I like about you is that you go into detail, and you obviously know your stuff. But there's a lot of internet natural health people out there who know a little bit, and they're well-meaning, but they know a little bit, and they're like a dog with a bone on that one thing. You know, look, we mentioned carnivore. You know, you'd have some carnivore swearing blind. It's and they are blind to perhaps the big picture.
What I've just said about the kidneys.
Yeah, exactly.
And so what you do is you get people into more trouble. There's not once you have diets for healing. Patients that were in the Crimean War, they couldn't get their hands on anything. So, and Florence Nightingale is not the lady with the lamp who she was portrayed to be.
No.
She was a statistician. She was out there doing a head count to see who was going to be fit enough to make it back to the front lines. They were just cannon fodder. Her memoirs, fantastic. But the lady with the lamp, and I even say who actually wrote those memoirs.
Right.
Was it even her? Somebody who had good insight wrote them.
Yeah.
Was it her? We don't know. But, these men that were injured, they could only get their hands on raw milk and bone broth and clean. They cleaned. And they opened the windows in the morning, let out the breath of the dead. Well, you're not. You're letting out toxins because you breathe toxins. When bacteria are doing their job, they're going to give off toxins. It's not the mold on the wall that's deadly. It's the toxins as it's all getting chowed down. So you see, opening the window is wonderful, which is why everybody should sleep with their window open. If you've got pets or children, obviously, put a window lock on it, have its safety, but you should always have a window cracked open when you go to sleep at night. And that's why teenage boys' rooms funk in the morning, because you breathe out toxins. So you pee them out, poo them out, sweat them out, breathe them out. Yes, there are foods for healing. If you want to heal the kidneys, you make Hippocrates soup, which is leeks, celery root, potatoes, tomatoes. And you cook it very slowly for a couple of hours, then you put it in a food mill, you take out all the fibre, you're just left with the broth. And then you have that twice a day. It is the most wonderful cleansing soup for the kidneys.
Right.
And you're not having to digest anything. There's no fibre left in it.
Yeah.
So there's not loads of energy going to the gut to digest it. And water, good clean water, which is why in scripture you're told to pray, fast and pray. But good clean water, try to drink 6 to 8 ounces every hour, as well as your other fluids. And there was this wonderful Iranian...
Every day? Or...
Yes, all the time. And there was an Iranian man, I've got his book actually, and I should remember his name.
Batman Galish?
Yes, I think it is. And he was imprisoned during the revolution. And the only thing he had was salt and water. So he was a doctor. So all of these... they heard he was a doctor, word went around very quickly. And so they all came to him, and all he could treat them with was water and salt.
Yeah.
And by the time it came for him to be released, he was doing a study, and he said, I'd like to stay a little bit longer because I'm still doing my study. So they let him stay. And it was remarkable that a lot of their ailments healed.
Yeah.
And of course, what do you need to make mucus in your body? You need water.
Right.
And so the lining of your stomach is full of mucus. So if you're not drinking enough water, the first thing that's going to happen is the lining of your stomach is going to get thin. So what's your stomach acid going to do? Burn a dirty great hole and start irritating the lining of your stomach.
Okay, yeah.
So what's going to happen? Your nice bacteria is going to go there to eat the debris. So what do the doctors say? Oh, you've got that Campylobacteria. We'll give you antibiotics to kill it. When actually they've just made the problem much worse. All you needed was water.
Yeah.
So modern medicine's a lie. All the nuts have arrived.
Oh, you got nuts.
Won't be able to speak now. And a pomegranate!
Yeah.
Ah.
It's too much here. I'm supposed to be coming around to have a look.
Go and have a look. Yeah, you can have a look. But yeah, bear in mind it's just a sketch at the moment.
That looks just like me.
Okay, take that.
And do you know what it looks like? It looks like I'm completely sad and bereft. Do you not think so?
I don't know. I've been looking at it for 3 hours, so.
That's what I look like when I look in the mirror since my daughter died.
Right.
That's what I see. It's picked up my grief. Isn't that? I bet if you painted me in a couple of years' time.
Right.
I look older, obviously. I look to get rid
Okay.
That's completely picked up. I knew when I was driving down here. I said, he's going to paint green.
Right.
You should be able to see it because I saw Jack was
Right.
Well, I said that to you in a moment.
You did.
It has.
Oh, well.
That is exactly what needs to be a record.
Okay.
If you'd like to buy signed prints of any of the paintings from the series, you can go to jakefern.com or go to jakefern.co.uk to see my personal work. You can message me about the possibility of commissioning a portrait for yourself or a loved one. We also have Righteous Brothers work available in unlimited and limited edition prints. Perfect for anyone who wants the world to know what they think about what's going on.
Standing by the coffee machine in the physics building and see this guy wearing clogs with his long hair. I wonder what, this is a weirdo. And I talked to him and found this is Brian May, of course. Yeah, a lot of groups are infiltrated. There will be infiltration in every group. Look, it's unimaginable to think that the powers that be would not infiltrate. Of course they'll infiltrate. They'll set up groups as well. Everything that happens, they will try and use it against us. And we have to think the same thing. Everything that happens, we should try and use it against them.
If you'd like to support 1,000 Words on Patreon, please go to the link in the description. You get access to exclusive behind-the-scenes interviews and merchandise, as well as advanced news on up-and-coming episodes and events.